Start the meeting.
Easily flip the switch to the entire minutes.
The Monday, August 21st, regular meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Management District Board of Directors. We have a roll call, please.
Director Oglesby.
His Cheez-Its are here.
Oh, he stepped away. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, Director Paul.
Here.
Director Eisenhower.
Here.
Director Riley. Director Edwards. Also not. Vice Chair Anderson. Here. And Chair Adams.
Here.
And we'll
Thank-
wait for.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And staff, we have present, we have General Manager David Stolt, our District Council Dave Laredo, and a lovely assemblage of people who've joined us for today's meeting. Thank you. And thank you for Christina Pacheco, our new, not even sure which title is right now, but
Board Clerk. Board Clerk, yep.
that sounds pretty serious. Okay, so with that, I think that we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. And since he just sat down, I'll see if I could get Mayor Oglesby to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all very much. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, thank you for that. And with that, we will go to see if there is any oral communication that we have from the public. This is your opportunity to address anything that is not on today's agenda. So Mr. Rowley is coming forward.
Excuse me.
Good evening, Tom Raleigh. I happen to be president of the Fisherman's Flats Neighborhood Association, but I also own a condo in Hawaii, oceanfront condo. And I used to live there for 6 years before I retired here in '81. And in October this year, the gravity draining of the Red Hill fuel reservoirs will be accomplished. And I mentioned this to you before, that this is what happens when pollution strikes a singular type facility in which there was poisoning, partial poisoning of a lot of Navy housing areas. And the Secretary of Defense came over last year and said, this is going to be, we're going to remove all the fuel. There's 20 fuel tanks. They're huge. They're buried. They're made during World War II. And it's been a tremendous drain because there were leaks and the Navy tried to cover it up. These were eventually discovered. And so anyway, it's good news to see that this is finally going to happen. There were over hundreds of minor repairs that had to be made before they could get to the point where they're finally defueling these tanks. So supposedly all this fuel is going to be transferred someplace else. I haven't seen where or how this is going to happen, but it's supposed to start in October 16th of this year. So it's a major undertaking to see what happens when you have a water supply that is polluted, when you rely too much on a single water supply. As you know, we're getting 2/3 of our water out of the Seaside Basin. It's recycled water. And I question and I query you and that concern over ensuring that that water is going to be safe and protected. We already had one spill into the bay, sewage. So hopefully this will not happen again, but guarantees that are made were made in that time and failed. So the sanctuary, which I'm on the Sanctuary Advisory Council, had a discussion last Friday at our meeting of the fine that was levied against the sewer board for the operation, the failed operation of the safety, and allowed sewage to be discharged directly into the bay. So there are hazards. And my question is, we're getting 2/3 of our water out of one source. And that's too much from one source, as far as I'm concerned, for the future of the peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Raleigh. Is there any other member present? Is any other member of the public present who wishes to comment on anything not on today's agenda? Are there any hands raised on our Zoom meeting?
Let me check 1 second. I see no hands raised.
Great, thank you very much. With that, we will then close oral communications.
You know what, actually, I apologize. There are 2 hands raised, and it's Michael Bear. Let me allow him to talk.
Okay, we'll start with Michael Bear. You have, your clock is running. You've got 3 minutes. We're glad to hear from you.
Sorry, 1 second. Sarah,
great.
can you allow him to talk, please? I apologize.
Don't do that.
Nope, sorry. I'm just trying to get this out of here.
There, he's back there. There he is.
There we go.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I couldn't find the unmute button. It just showed up. Good afternoon, everybody. Grateful we're all surviving a hurricane. And I've heard of one death in Mexico, and that was it. Haven't heard of any, just lots of flooding. So I also read recently that the LAFCO hearing is September 21st. And I was very, I liked hearing that. I hope that is the date it actually happens. My understanding is it's like 6 or 8 hours or 4 hours or however long it is. And it's one day and a decision will be forthcoming at the end of that day or within a short period of time of that day. And I'd like to ask council if that's actually what we're anticipating. And I like that day because it's the equinox, which is one of the high holy days. I'm a pagan. I have 4 high holy days. And so I see this as a good sign, September 21st. And I pray for justice on that day because we all lived through what happened at LAFCO and justice needs to prevail on the 21st. So thank you everybody for all the work you guys do and look forward to hearing both the director's report and the legal report later today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Is there another hand raised?
Yes, we have Melody Chrislock.
Thank you. Melody, you're up. 3 minutes.
Melody Chrislock, Public Water Now. So Mr. Raleigh's comment was obviously a plug for CalAM's desal, but I'm always wondering why anybody thinks that CalAM's desal can happen, even if it could ever get through Marina. How could anyone afford it? So we started out in 2017 with the most expensive water in this country. Since that time, the water costs for the typical Tier 2 bill have gone up 51%, more than 51%. So the Office of Ratepayers Advocates estimates that the desal would add another 60 to 70% on top of that. Who will be able to afford any of this water if that desal plant were ever to be built, which I seriously don't think it ever will be. But I mean, I would really like the business community and Mr. Raleigh to think about how in the world this could ever work economically. I mean, how can a business pay that kind of money? How can a typical resident pay that kind of money for water? This starts to become ridiculous. I don't know what they're thinking. You'd think by now they would have figured out how expensive that water is really going to be. Anyway, I look forward to the LAFCO hearing and hopefully Judge Wills will side with the voters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chrislock. Are there any additional hands raised?
No, I see no further hands raised.
We have 7 items on the consent calendar.
Susan Schiavone came in late.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Hold on. Yep.
Can you hear me, Susan?
Susan, you may speak now.
I know. All right.
Sure.
Can you hear us?
Oh, one more time.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to criticize what Mr. Raleigh said about the military water, but I just wanted to add one comment that said, I so support the district buying out Cal-Am because they are a much more trustworthy organization in terms of transparency and water quality and what you're going to do for our community in terms of water than Cal-Am has ever been. And I am sure that they're not now. They only reveal what they have to reveal. And so I just wanted to add that one little piece of comment and to support once again the district pursuing the buyout and following Measure J. And I hope sometime in the future we will have a public water agency which will address some of these issues locally about water quality quite well. And I also want to just say that I'm sure Monterey One and the district are doing the best they can to make Pure Water Monterey very good, drinkable, clean water and following as many standards as they can so that we have good water in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shivani. Okay, last call.
I see no further hands raised.
Okay, that's it. I'm closing oral communications, moving forward to the consent calendar, of which we have 7 items. Is there anyone from the board who wishes to pull anything for either question or comments on the consent calendar? Yes, George. Okay, 2 here. Yep.
I'd like to pull the item 1 for which are the minutes of the last board meeting for a couple corrections and clarifications.
Okay.
And then item 5.
Okay.
A brief comment.
Thank you very much. And you, Mr. Riley?
I support pulling item 5.
I do too. Okay. Are there any members of, is there any member of the public who wishes to pull anything from the consent calendar for question or comment?
I see no hands raised at this
Thank you
time.
very much. Okay, and I see no one coming forward. So with that, let's go to item number 1 to Ms. Ball.
Thank you. Okay, so if just a couple corrections and a couple things that aren't clear to me that I'm hoping we can get clarified. On page 5 of the hard copy of the agenda, towards the top of the page where the minutes summarize Susan Schiavone's comments about the Cal-Am meeting in Salinas. And it says towards the bottom of that paragraph, Cal-Am meeting was disassembling with a lot of vague information, and that should be corrected to dissembling, meaning hiding facts. Okay.
Sounds
And-
nice. Thank you for catching that.
You're welcome. At the bottom, at the same page toward the bottom, the next to last paragraph, discussing the Carmel River Basin. And it says the Carmel River Basin at 1,411 acre feet is about 500 acre feet over or under in June, and I don't understand what that is saying.
Just strike over or under. I thought we did some corrections to that and.
We did, and this isn't the final version,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So
Yes.
it's being correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can make corrections now.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not going to
Because
change
they
the
wouldn't-
substance. The
It-
sentence basically says in June, there was approximately 500 acre feet, I think there were 497, added to the Carmel River diversions, which brings it closer to its water right. But there's going to be some additional discussion in this topic tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. And then turning to the top of the next page, page 6, discussing the 3,500 acre feet delivery total for the water year and fiscal year. Can you clarify what
I'm sorry, which one?
There, at the top of page 6, talking about the pure water Monterey delivery of 3,500 acre feet for the
Yes,
year, and it says for the water year and fiscal year.
correct.
What-
So it reached 3,500 for the fiscal year. Yeah, and this is probably a misinterpretation because it's only got 2,900 for the water year, which starts 3 months after the fiscal year and ends 3 months later. So we'll correct that. General counsel just made the suggestion that we'll just pull the minutes and add them to next month's
Okay.
agenda for consent so we can get all of these changes.
I think that's a
Yep.
good idea.
Okay,
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
all right. And then I had one more, but I've given that to the board clerk, so that can be done
Great.
before the next.
Excellent. Good. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And now I will go to Mr. Riley for item number 5.
I was only curious if staff could just give us a 1-minute review of what changes in the channel have occurred. Just briefly, an overview of just what's changed.
So could I make a add on to your comment? This was so fascinating to me. I wanted to know essentially when the last update was, and if we could schedule having an update on this project, because it just is such
Well,
a,
and I think this is going to end up getting kind of subsumed. We've got a call tomorrow with Monterey County Water Resources Agency on an update to the FEMA study. So FEMA does a lot of work where they look at transects as well, and they're the ones who define the 10-year flood, the 50-year flood, the 100-year flood, and puts those lines on a page. The $200,000+ that was earmarked for the county to do the study that I think was discussed at the last County Water Resources Agency board meeting, is going to involve us. Thomas and I will be on a call actually Wednesday, I think it is, with the agency. But some of this work is going to be useful, I would imagine. But anyway, you want to talk a little bit about
Sure.
Director Riley's
Yeah.
question, and
So, when San Clemente Dam came out in 2015, there were several people looking at how removal of the dam would impact reaches downstream. But prior to that, the district has had a long history of tracking what they call the profile, which is the low flow channel of the river. And what it has shown over time is that because of 2 reservoirs, we had what you call a sediment starved river. And that river has a capacity to move sediment. And so below the dam, since sediment was being trapped behind the dams, the river's picking up sediment in the riverbed and down cutting. And so the river is down cut over probably the last 40 years, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 feet in different places. So what you end up is with a kind of what they call an incised channel. And so one of the proposed benefits of the dam removal is that some of this sediment transport will start being more natural, coming from the creeks above where it used to get trapped behind the dam, so that down cutting would stop. Problems with down cutting include undermining bridge piers and all sorts of things of that nature. So what we found was, and CSUMB found, is that with the dam removal, a slug of sediment did come down the river. And it did fill in some pools temporarily, and some have now since scoured out. But it's kind of a changing situation, but it's very important information, because what it looks at is if you have a certain amount of release of sediment, which was behind San Clemente Dam, not a ton came out but there was a portion they left on purpose to migrate through the system. And so it's kind of tracking how that worked its way through and what the river is doing over the long term. So basically, a survey like this is not as detailed as what the county is going to do. If they're going to look at flood elevations, they're going to do cross sections at a much tighter interval, and they're probably going to have much more solid control on their elevations and their mapping. But what this does is it tells you what kind of sediment is in the pools, whether it's sand, gravel, or larger material. It shows the elevation changes at various locations, at various cross sections. So the county is going to have a lot more cross sections when they do their modeling. This is a subset of cross sections, and also probably at different locations. And it's been useful because in 2017, when the Dampier flooded, there was material there that was documented that had dropped out after the dam removal. So that was a piece of information to show that the channel did indeed change in that particular year associated with new sediment coming down. So this is another data point that we're hoping to get information, and we could certainly go back to some graphs and plots and present this information. There's several completed reports already from years past, and then we could update the board on the new findings if we wanted to include the most recent information.
I'm curious because we have the Los Padres Dam under consideration, so on. And I'm just curious about what we've learned about channel design from dam removal, and what didn't work or what did work, or what do we learn from that in case there's another dam we're going to remove from the same river. And because there was a substantial investment and study about where the pools would occur and how they might place boulders and kind of contours, shaping the contour of the channel. And some worked, some didn't work.
Right, and that was the design through the actual San Clemente Dam reservoir. So that is slightly different than what this is looking at. This is looking at the changes that happen downstream. I think there is a cross section or two in the upstream area, but it's really, if a pulse of sediment is released, what happens to that over time? Because there are complicated models that will do that, but the reality is often significantly different.
This provided an opportunity for me to ask the question. That's what I wanted to give
And not only that, but if you put on your calendar next Tuesday, the 29th, you actually get to ask Aman that question. CalAm is hosting, we're participating, NOAA and NIMS are participating in a Los Padres Dam community meeting at the Carmel Valley Community Youth Center beginning at 5:30. And that's basically to discuss some of the findings and conclusions of the Los Padres Reservoir and Dam Alternatives.
You said that?
Send it to the board, yeah. We'll do that tomorrow.
So I can catch up.
Yeah, and then there will be 2 electronic versions of the same workshop that I also have that I'll make available.
Well, and the good news about the San Clemente Dam removal is it has really naturalized since the dam has been removed. Native riparian vegetation is coming in, the big, large flows rearranged some of the boulders. But the really good news is there doesn't appear to be a fish passage issue, which was everybody was worried about, that when it got resorted, did it create a new fish passage barrier? But it, up to now, the data shows that there is no barrier. So.
Yeah, I just want to add 2 things. Doug Smith from CSUMB and now the current proposer, I forget his name, but this has been an important resource for them as well. So it's good for us. It's good for the relationship with the university, and they've studied it, the river, probably better than a lot of folks have, and more currently. So it's good information to have, and it's a good relationship between us and academia to pursue, number one. And to a comment made earlier, lessons learned. I don't think there was anything bad that happened related to San Clemente in terms of sediment transport. Definitely the resorting and the fact that it happened on maybe a 10-year flood event versus what was expected to withstand. But when Paso Hondo flooded in 2017, the question that you heard was, we didn't flood in 95. We didn't flood in 98. What's happened? And yes, the bed of the river had gone up. But to Thomas's point, There was some sediment that was known to be left behind that was supposed to work its way through the river, some of which has worked its way further down the river. And so it was a very unfortunate timing for it to be there in the rains of 2017 and a little bit still being there this year, because that's, again, the bed of the river is raised still in that area and it flooded again. But, you know, it's trying to work its way down and it'll be some other part of the river's problem at some point, but eventually it should all kind of work itself out. So it's not a bad, it's a bad situation, but it's not an unexpected outcome with that. Thanks, Thomas.
That's really moving forward with our consent agenda. Okay, any other comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to pull the item because I think the study is of interest to the public, because how the recovery of the river evolves after the dam removal is, you know, is of interest. The materials talk about the dam removal on the Elwha River in Washington State. Just so happens that years ago I hiked there and attended a presentation on how that river was, how they were studying the recovery after dam removal there, and it was very successful. They were able to reintroduce the same species of salmon that had lived there. So I think the public will be interested to know that the study is happening. I know it takes a long time to really find out, you know, what happens with the dam removal, but I'm very glad that the district is working with the university on the study, and it's something that the public should know about.
So it sounds like there is an interest in having a presentation on this. And so my hope is that we'll be able to schedule that before the end of this calendar year. Good. Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Minus
2 through 5.
2 through 5, because we're going to bring one.
Sorry, yes, thank you very much. Items 2 through 5. Actually, items 2 through 7. Yeah, we'll do 2 through 7. Is there, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. So we have Dr. Anderson and probably Dr. Paul as well. First and second, could we please, actually all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Great. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. With that, we will close consent calendar and turn to our general manager's report.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a suggestion that we move the first public hearing, item 13, to ahead of the general manager's report, given the amount of public comment and discussion on consent calendar items. We do have a representative of CalAm with us, which was the request of Director Edwards during Finance and Administrative Committee when they heard this. So in the interest of his timeline, I think we could open the public hearings and then go to the general manager's report and come back to public hearings.
Do we need to have a motion to change the order of the agenda?
Yep.
Okay, could I have a motion, please, to move? Thank you very much. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Oh, and I didn't even ask, does the public good with this? Seeing no hands raised or people coming forward, we will say take that as a yes. So we have.
While Thomas is coming up and the PowerPoint's getting ready, I wanted to point something out that Director Paul mentioned. So the Elwha was a much more dramatic dam removal. They actually kind of exploded the dam at a certain hour, a certain day, and we could all webcast watch it in a big gush of water, where the San Clemente was very methodical and incremental and didn't create any excitement whatsoever. But the Elwha was pretty cool. I'm sure you could still find a video on YouTube somewhere.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, well,
Thank
this
you.
is action item 13. I'm stepping in for Maureen Hamilton, who's the lead in all the communications for this item. But basically, this item is consider adoption of the initial study and mitigated negative declaration for Los Padres Dam outlet modifications, including the adoption of the CEQA findings and the mitigation measures. Next slide, please.
Did you want?
Oh, okay. Easier for you. So basically, California American Water is proposing to modify an existing low-level regulating outlet at Los Padres Dam and Reservoir. That outlet, just think of it as the drain in your bathtub that had a mudslide that covered it up a little bit. And it still functions, but it doesn't drain properly. The three primary goals of this project are to meet California Department of Water Resources and Division of Safety of Dams, the mandated requirement that they could drain the reservoir if there was an emergency. It's also to supply the Carmel River during the low flow summer season to meet inflow stream requirements and to restore water supply to these existing fish trap and ladder. So water is currently being released from Los Padres Reservoir now through a siphon. And in some cases, when it gets lower, they add a pump. And the reason they have to do that is because this outlet is compromised. And the goal is to get away from the siphon again and get away from having to use a diesel pump to bring the water up and over into the Carmel River below. Okay, let's see. Is it going here? Oh,
Is it not working?
it's not going forward.
I got it.
So basically, this project is necessary because in 2018, 2019, and 2020, rock slides on the side of the reservoir covered this outlet with mud, rock, and debris. It's not completely plugged, but it can only release a small portion of water. Currently, it can release up to 1 to 3 cubic feet per second, but in the past, it had been operated up to 10 and 15 cubic feet per second with a maximum of 30 to 50 CFS. So you can see here, this is the slope that failed. This is, if you're standing on the dam and you look to the right, this is the slope that failed, and the 980 inlet is underwater over in this area and has been covered with debris and rock. And it has continued to slide periodically. The last one, big one, I think was in 2020. So the project has several aspects. This is this outlet that we're talking, here's the slide on the aerial photography. This is the outlet that is compromised. The project would create a connection to the compromised outlet and have a pipe laying on the bottom of the reservoir and a new inlet to release water from the reservoir. And that way, if the slide continues, it just buries basically a pipe that is self-contained and can't drag in any other sediment and debris. There's also a set of valves down here that are going to be replaced, and those valves are what control the flow of the pipe that runs through the dam underground, and then a new pipe replacement to the actual fish trap and fish ladder, and then some modifications to the road here. There's a really tight turn, and they would do some excavation and make this turn easier for trucks to get into. So those are the basic three components of the project. So the purpose of the initial study and the mitigated negative deck that everybody had a chance to review is to satisfy the California Environmental Quality Act, which requires a public agency to review the potential effects of a proposed project actions on environmental resources. The initial study was the first step to determine if the proposed action would have significant environmental impacts. And based on that initial study, it was chosen that a mitigated negative declaration is the best path forward, and that was what was prepared. That was given a 30-day public review period, and the lead agency considers this before approving. And then this, if approved today, would allow CalAm to move forward and apply for additional permits for this work. So today, you as the board of directors are acting as an independent body to consider all the information in the record, including the draft final initial study and mitigated negative declaration, the comments from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They were the ones who gave a set of comments, and additional written or oral comments received today, if there are any. And the recommended action would make a determination that the project will not have a significant effect on the environment with the proposed mitigation measures. So let's just go through some examples of impact categories. There's biological resources, geology and soils, hazardous materials and hazards, and wildfire. With any kind of project like this, mitigations can include minimizing the footprint, having a very specific work area, containing work in the water, such as using a silt curtain to prevent any kind of stirring up of debris on the reservoir bottom, preventing it from propagating through the reservoir, doing pre-surveys for special species of concerns, raptors, any kind of steelhead if they're next to the valving area, and to just kind of remove or avoid those areas if you have to. And also construction hours and worker training and restoring disturbed areas is also kind of a mitigation effort. So with hazardous materials and wildfire mitigations, you can have fire extinguishers, you can have fire prevention and suppression training, properly stored materials, and store temporary electrical equipment, power equipment, and dust collecting devices. Oops. Did that do it? And no smoking. Let's go one back. Okay, let me see. Sorry. All right, here we go. And yeah, so then that kind of covers hazardous materials and wildfire. And then with geology, soils, and wildfire, again, you have slope stabilization. So when they widen the road and create a steep area, they can create a retaining wall if they want, and they can use native grass seeds. They could use jute netting. You minimize vegetation removal, and you prohibit parking in natural areas and sensitive plant species areas. Parking on roads, and then trying to prevent landslides and landslide warning systems. So there are a whole host of mitigation measures that are listed in these documents. That was just a sample. It's important to note that after the board makes a decision on this tonight, there are a whole bunch of other safeguards, which are the individual permits that they will have to get, that will have their own set of permit conditions from the regulatory agencies. So tonight, the recommendation is to address any additional written or oral comments received at the public hearing, adopt the CEQA findings, and then adopt the resolution 2023-12, adopting the initial study and the mitigated negative deck and the mitigation monitoring reporting program, and approving the project, and then directing staff to file a notice of determination of approval of the project. Today we have Aman Gonzalez with CalAm, an engineer that is up in the area almost daily to answer additional questions. And I don't know if we got Mike on the phone today or not, but yeah, so I will leave it at that and see if there's any additional questions.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. So let me first go to the board, and then we'll have the additional presentation. Are there any quick questions at this point before we move? Go ahead.
And go back to your slide that showed the image of the lake and the reservoir and the piping systems. Yeah, right there. I didn't understand, because I couldn't tell from what I could read and understand, from the pipe that's laid in the reservoir, the yellow line.
Yes.
From the lower right to the upper left. Okay, to the upper left, there is a pipe there that goes under the dam and out to the channel area somewhere.
To the current set of valves.
Right, and that's not shown, and I could never understand. I didn't understand what was happening there, and now that you say that, I just want to point out the diagram didn't show it, but I didn't. I understand it now. So you're taking the intake from the lower right, still using the existing pipe that's over near the
upper left.
The upper left.
Yeah.
But you're hooking into that pipe. Yeah, okay, okay.
Because that light rocky area to the far left.
Yeah.
Shaped like a fan.
Yep.
Just keeps going down into the reservoir. And so that's the fan of rock slide that covered up the existing intake
Right.
near the
okay.
upper left.
So anyway, but you're tying into an existing pipe and the pipe wasn't shown and that's what I just couldn't follow that.
Document, and yeah, that would have been a good addition there.
Okay, that's my only question.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Ball?
Yes, question about the recommended mitigation or mitigation to protect endangered various wildlife species. So some of the comments and responses talk about consultation. The mitigation would rely on consultation with federal and state wildlife protection, federal or state wildlife protection agency. So my question is, how involved are those agencies when during the implementation of the mitigation? Because the plans seem to, say if a species is found, then they do this. If it's not found, do they monitor? Do the Fish and Wildlife and so on monitor the mitigation efforts?
Yeah, so based on my experience, when you receive a permit from these agencies, they have very specific language that if you encounter something within a certain distance of your work area, you're supposed to notify them immediately. And that's usually when they will discuss the best option amongst themselves and the team that's doing the work. So for example, if you were changing valves and you ran into red-legged frog right next to them, you would notify them and they would say, okay, well, we want you to stop until you have someone remove the frog from the area. And then they usually allow you to proceed after some kind of action like that. I've heard other instances where equipment, in the initial plan was supposed to stay in one particular area, but they couldn't reach something. So then they asked for special permission to actually put, a piece of plywood down on the riverbed and take one extra step with the equipment to get something. So whenever something gets, let's say some critical, it's usually a phone conversation where, or an email chain where they resolve the issue over a matter of a day or two. But it's usually, a consultant like who would be on site doing the biological monitoring. The district will probably be there as well. We've monitored lagoon when they breached it to look for steelhead and make sure that steelhead weren't getting flushed out to the ocean, or equipment wasn't like running over something of that nature on a stream bed. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions or comments on this part? Okay, then I think what I'm going to do is have Mr. Gonzalez speak, and then we'll take it out to the public for questions and comments on the overall picture. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Aman Gonzalez. I'm a project manager with California American Water, and I've been working on this project since the landslide occurred. I don't have a formal presentation. I'm mainly here because I was asked to be here and to answer any questions that the board had about the project. But I have been involved with the project since the beginning. We actually have the landslide recorded. A member of the National Marine Fisheries Service was there when the major slide occurred. So we had it on our Facebook site for a few years, or for a year or so. And if anybody's interested, we can show that to you. It's a pretty interesting landslide event. But yeah, Thomas, appreciate your help. I've been working with Maureen primarily on this project, and Thomas, I know Maureen's on vacation. So yeah, it's a very important project. I was kind of a little stubborn to try to push the project before you sooner. I know Maureen being out, we were talking about moving it to September, but we're really trying to get ahead of the permits that are needed to do this project. As Thomas mentioned, during the early winter, we have to bring in a diesel pump to the dam, and we have to set a diesel pump on top of the dam that basically pumps water from the reservoir downstream to the river. And we really don't like doing that. And we've done it for 2 years now. We want to stop doing that after this season. So that's why this project is so important, so we can not rely on a diesel pump during that time of the year. Yeah, I don't have too much more information to provide if folks have questions.
Let's see if people have any questions. Yes, Mr. Riley, are you just waving around or do you have a question?
No, I do. I'm sorry. The cost of the project in general falls on who?
This would fall under a couple of different buckets. One, it's an insurance claim because the landslide was unforeseen. So we would be applying for insurance money through our insurer. And anything that wasn't covered by the insurance company would be borne by the ratepayer to continue to operate the dam per the
And is there a
requirement.
ballpark number for that? Just the total project. I don't know how it works out, but
Yeah, we haven't gone out to bid yet. The initial numbers we have received from our consultant are between $3 and $5 million.
and then the one question I have, the one other question I have is in the description of the construction schedule. There's a little cryptic phrase here that says the only proposed improvements in the outlets and the pipeline at this time. I'm just curious if there's some contingency fears or something about the scope of the project. Is there some fear that there may be another 50,000 or some large number that might be I don't know, discovered as you proceed?
No, my understanding is the scope is pretty well defined. I mean, obviously this is underwater work. So sometimes you can find surprises when you're digging up trees and boulders that have plugged the outlet. You might have to go deeper with the caisson that we're building to protect the existing outlet, where we're going to make the connection of that pipe. It's not shown anymore. But yeah, the scope is pretty well defined.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions from you? Yes.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is about fire mitigation. So you know what it's like up there in terms of the surroundings. There's going to be a lot of trucks going in and out. Is there going to be some concerted effort to remove like the grasses alongside the road so they can't start a fire and just really protect?
Yeah. Typically
area.
what happens, and I was involved with the San Clemente Dam removal project, and what happens is once we get all the requirements by the permitting agencies, we require the contractor who's doing the work to submit a safety plan, and they address fire in that plan. And that plan gets reviewed by all the permitting agencies, and it basically has to address any concerns, any fire concerns that the permitting agencies have.
Okay, I have a second one. Might seem a little paranoid, but I heard a story today about the fires in Canada, and they were trying to evacuate that one town, and the road down below got closed from the escape over the bridge because overnight, I guess, I don't know if it was a weekend, I don't know when it was, but overnight, a bunch of equipment, fire equipment got stolen from the place that they had, put it for safekeeping, put it until they could continue the next day. That happened 3 times in a week. And so I'm wondering, you're going to have somebody camped out there with a big dog? How do you protect that kind of thing? It's so far away. I mean, it's really remote.
Dog with a surprise word.
It is remote, and we have had things stolen both at the San Clemente Dam site and at the Los Padres site. It's happened. In this particular case, because of the amount of equipment that we have out there, we would likely have security fencing around any critical equipment. We typically don't have somebody posted there 24 hours a day, but there's also the possibility of putting cameras in to watch things overnight. So that could be addressed if there was a concern there.
They had vehicles taken and, big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want the public to pay for that.
Right. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, a couple questions. The first is on what you had raised about the cost being perhaps
in response to Director Riley's question that there may be some insurance coverage here for the slope slide.
Yes.
Do we know if in fact that's correct?
We've submitted a claim to our insurance company, and we are basically tallying up all of the costs to date, including the future costs, and we will update the insurance company with basically, once we get our bids in from the contractor, that's when we're going to basically resubmit that to our insurer to get an opinion on what they're going to cover.
This slide occurred when? What year?
2018 was the first slide, the big slide.
So this is that's significant passage of time. Is there any concern here that the claim has become stale?
No, I update the insurance company pretty much every 3 months that the project is still ongoing, and it's taken time mainly because of the permitting involved.
Sure.
Yeah, so I update the insurance company.
And do we have any sense about what the amount of coverage is and what we could expect or hope?
I don't. Yeah, I don't have
$3 to $5
it.
million for the project. How much of that do we think would be not borne by the ratepayer?
I don't have that update right now. I could find out and get back to this group if you need an answer.
That'd be great. Even just an email to the general manager, and then that would be awesome. That would be really good.
All right.
The second question, completely different topic. The failed slope. Looking at the picture, I'm no geologist, but that looks bad. It looks very unstable.
Yep.
Certainly on the surface anyway. I did not see anything in this project to address or mitigate further slide.
Yeah.
And my concern here is it's challenging to look at the project in a photograph. They're good photographs, but I see the hexagonal shape moving the drainage pipes out some amount of feet. I couldn't tell you what it was from a photo. But the question here is, what's the risk that we get another slide and this whole project is for naught, right? Or worse, much, much worse, that the safety of the people working underwater are in jeopardy because there could be a slide or whatever. So when I read the negative deck, so much about wildlife, there's so many mitigation that there's nothing about mitigating a future slide. And I don't know.
I can address that, I think. So we did have a geologist and a geotechnical engineer evaluate the slide. And they did say that it's going to continue to move and spread. And what they did, though, was they looked at, and I'm not a geologist, but they looked at what they call the hazard zone. So basically, worst case, if the slide continued to grow based on their understanding of the slide, they drew a line around the existing slide that said, this is the limit of where kind of, if the slide kept moving, of where the new deposits would fall. And so we made sure to place the outlet well outside of that hazard line that the geologist determined. And so that's how we address that risk. And yeah, that's primarily what we did. And we did, our geotechnical engineers took a look at the slide, and there really isn't a way to stop it from sliding. It's just too steep, it's too tall, you really can't stop it from sliding. So all you can do really is move the new outlet outside of the limits of a future slide based on the geologist's opinion.
Okay.
Yep.
I have nothing further.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mayor, are you good? Okay.
I just wonder, Dave, can you just tell us the parameters of the potential cost of retaining the dam or taking the dam down? What were the brackets we were talking about? I'm just trying to get a sense of this expense related to those two projections.
Yeah, it's sitting on my desk, but taking the dam out is on the order of 90 plus million, give or take. Leaving the dam in and dealing with up and downstream fish passage doubles that. However, they chose the most expensive fish passage option to do that analysis, and there was a cheaper version. So ultimately, when push comes to shove, we don't know what the fish passage solution will ultimately be, but it's quite a bit more. Think of it as double.
Well, and
Figure,
then just
think of it as it's 100 million at the cheapest and two at the most expensive.
right, that was the bracket that I
Probably
was kind of had in
overreaching.
my mind, and I just wanted to know the scale of this compared to those two
Yeah.
brackets.
And,
Okay.
and I can kind of speak to that a little bit. This is an immediate need where we have to do something now to make sure we can deliver water downstream to the river, whereas the dam removal and dam expansion alternatives are kind of a longer term decision that needs to be made. So this is definitely something we'd like to do soon. Yep.
Understand.
Or need to do soon.
Yeah, I would just add that it's makes me a lot happier that we're not using diesel pumps, that we get this thing done, right? And just use good old gravity to.
I can't hear. Hi. Okay, you can hear me? Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
good. I lost the sound. I heard the whole thing, and then when it went to me, I lost the sound. I want to thank the presentation. The question I had, this is quite a piece of engineering. It was very interesting. And I appreciate the question about this, are we doing the right thing? Lost my train of thought for just a second. It's coming back. Oh, yeah. So all of the permits, is there kind of a timeline? Like, it just seemed complicated. You got Department of, Fishing, and you got 4 or 5 agencies you got to get permits from, and just how quickly does this move? It sounds like you're trying to get it done this year, when the water's, this is the last year that you have to, use those pumps, get it fixed. So I am curious about that. And I just also want to comment that I really like the metaphor of imagine a bathtub with a landslide, a mudslide in it, because it really is beautiful. Just expand that to the size of the dam and the desilting. Like deferred maintenance. Like, shouldn't we been pumping the dirt out over and maintaining this too? I understand the rock slide's a different animal, so but anyway, it's great to see maintenance happen because that seems so rare. And so I support moving forward with what you got. And negative deck, that's great. You can do it at a negative declaration level. I think that's good news. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Are there other hands raised? If yes, unmute yourself and we're ready for your comments. Here we go.
Thank you. I just found the mute button. Thank you. Yeah, I had a few questions, and they're just these. What do they think the life of the project will be? How long will this last in terms of the dam? And what kind of maintenance will be done in regard to keeping this system clear and making sure that it does last? And then I had one other question about the land. Are there any risks of other areas or hills around the dam that could possibly also cause a slide that may damage that system or make things worse? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I don't know if we want to address the questions at
Let's
this
get all the
point.
comments and then-
Okay, great. Okay. Mr. Rowley.
Excuse me. Tom Raleigh again. Many years before Mr. Stolt arrived, I gave the general manager a video of a former Navy shipmate of mine that had portable dredging equipment that was used to dredge around rivers in Florida. He had a business, and he operated for about 10 years and then went out of business. We've had various times in the last 25 years, we could have gone in there and dredged quite a bit of slips and slides and landslides and what have you, but we missed the opportunity when the dam has been low. And always we were looking for the big picture and the long range and, final solution. But the thing is, I think we need to see more. You need to be told, when is this going to be done? I didn't hear this. And maybe it's in your written material. And it seems like this is kind of time sensitive if they need to get it done right away. And it's relatively inexpensive considering the big picture on the dam, whether the removal 100 million, 200 million, what kind of fish ladder. But the thing is, I would want to be pinned down. When are the permits going to be? What is the timeline on the project? That's the important thing. Is when's it moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other hands raised?
I see no further hands.
Excellent.
So let's address a few of those.
Thank you.
And let's not mix up the Los Padres Reservoir Dam and Reservoir Alternative Study with this project. I think we talked a little bit about it. And, dredging was looked at in the context of the alternative study. So a reader can go find that. There's a link to it on our website. And dredging is a lot easier to do in Florida where it's sandy soils, and North Carolina's Outer Banks where there's sandy soils than what we have up here, but it has been looked at. There was a question about other exposure to landslides and so forth. I don't think that's been looked at. There's not been a hydrogeologist that went section to section, is my understanding. This is the problem that they have and that they looked at, but it does translate to the life and maintenance of this project. The whole goal of that new intake is to be outside the fan and the zone of continuing slide from this slide. So, and I'd say its life is indefinite until some other unstudied landslide might happen. So, I think that's where we're at. Now, on timeline, you touched on it, Aman, if you would just repeat what you're looking at for the benefit of the crowd.
Yeah. Does it restate my name or you guys know me? So we have all of our permit applications completed. They're just waiting for this approval and then we'll get them into all the agencies. The agency approvals can take some time. We're estimating 6 to 9 months for the agencies. So we're not looking to start this in 2023. This would be in 2024 when the reservoir level is low. So summer, fall of 2024.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And I know you know this, but maybe for the public, that this is not the district's project. The district is the lead agency, and the scope of your decision goes to the adoption of the initial study and negative deck, the environmental impacts of the project that Cal-Am as the sponsor is proposing.
Thank you for reminding us all of that. I appreciate that. Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, then I think we'll be able to close the public hearing. And we will have to consider a motion to move this forward. And I would entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-12, adopting the initial study and the mitigated negative deck and the MMRP, and approve the project. And then we will also be directing staff to file a notice of determination of the approval of the project.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Okay. Well, with that, thank you very much for your presentations. And we will close item 13 and return now, unless our general manager isn't ready yet for his general manager's report.
I am ready. Thomas, you had the little clicker. Is it still up on the? Grab that for me. And I'm chuckling because I just saw how sunburned I am from yesterday. Like, wow.
The sunburn.
Why
and
didn't
I.
you stop me when you saw me? Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yes.
Hope so.
The screen exaggerates. what it
Yeah,
is, but-
no, it's kind of amusing.
Okay, if I can get this group back together again, no more talk about the sunburns.
And
We
I'm
will
gonna
get
glide
back to.
through the status report but I do want to highlight two specific issues while we're in there. But before I do, I want to let you know that we received our first FEMA reimbursement check last week.
Excellent.
It was only for a little over 15,000, I believe, but it's a start, which means now we'll be in regular progression until we recover some of the damages that we incurred during flooding. Okay, so moving forward on the,
Is it not working?
go
I
ahead,
can go ahead.
I may be out of range. Let's pause here for a second. And this is where I want to highlight a couple of things that are going on that we're going to have to figure out how to address moving forward with CalAm. You see here that the actual Carmel River Basin withdrawals or production of 1,855. This is through the end of July. So we have August and September remaining in the water year. The water right is 3376. And the last couple of months of production have been right around the let's see, I actually have it here, 497, 445. So we may see 2 more months of production that is somewhere between 800 and 900 acre feet, which means the company is leaving some of their water right unutilized in the river. This concerns us because it's one of the cheapest forms of water supply. Part of that's driven by things we talked about with respect to aquifer storage and recovery, well capacity in the Carmel Valley, failure to get the rehabilitation of the Rancho San Carlos well online, deferral of a new well in the Rancho Cañada area. And we're now in the low flow mode since about the 3rd week in July. Once we have a series of low flow days in a row, the upper wells on the river have to be turned off and only the lower wells can be used. And so I think what I'm seeing is that we will end the water year having left that water right not fully tapped. And that should be a concern for the reasons I've stated. And then on the other side, you can see the actual withdrawals from the Seaside groundwater basin of 1,812. The limit is 1,474 under the adjudication. So they're currently at overpumping. Now that may change slightly because they can kind of backward look and reassign some of the pumping. But it's not a good development to be over on your Seaside Basin pumping, under on your river pumping. We went 2 months during this period, May and June, where there was no need to pull Pure Water Monterey water because the full 3,500 that's contractually obligated had been delivered. But we were still injecting in May from aquifer storage and recovery. So it wasn't just a clear shot that you could reverse the flow and take river water to Seaside, but it could have been done conceptually in June. Now beginning July, they will be back on recovery from Pure Water Monterey, and then August and September increase recovery. So they'll want that Monterey pipeline going from the north to the south. But there is this issue, which as you follow on next slide, well, just the only thing to report here is Sand City desal was productive again last month, which is good. But I want to get to the next slide, please, Christina. And this is where you can see the different sources. And if you look at the Carmel River Basin number, the total number, which is the second from the bottom, that's at 1855. The Seaside Basin, the 1812. But you see in the ASR recovery column, in June, we've taken stored water, banked water, which is a more expensive supply source than either the Seaside Basin or the Carmel River Basin. Well, you don't want to take more Seaside Basin because we're already kind of at its limit. But we're facing, really for the first time that we've seen it, where we may leave some water right in the river. I mean, it's okay to have it 10s and 20s of acre feet, but not hundreds and hundreds of acre feet. So this is something that I think is now on our radar screen to have a conversation with Some of the solutions are infrastructure, production capacity. But it's an unsettling development that I just wanted to point out to you. And that
Unsettling
because we're leaving water in the river, which is great for the river. Can't complain if I'm a fish, but it's the cheapest source of supply are the groundwater basin and Seaside and the Carmel River. And to the extent we could have found a way to use additional Carmel River supplies. Now we were very focused on diversion to ASR, so there was less opportunity. There was also more Table 13 water rights because it was a rainy season. So you rename your withdrawals from the river from the normal water right and name it, 514, 511 acre feet, you get to rename to Table 13, coming under a different water right. But if you could have pulled more river water and gotten it further throughout the system, then you wouldn't have had to work the Seaside Basin harder than the adjudicated limit. And you could have reduced the ASR recovery, which is, frankly, stored water, more expensive to produce and withdraw. And during the construction of Pure Water Monterey, that's our safety net. So you want to keep that safety net until you've got this new supply online. So I'd really hate to see it happen again, but we have been looking at some of the PUC filings related to some of the new and rehabilitated wells in the Carmel Valley. And the timeline's probably not in favor of not repeating this again next year. So I think we may have to look at trying to compel a little more action on getting the rehab wells online, getting the new well started so that it's available during the construction period for Pure Water Monterey, because otherwise we'll be squandering stored water that, again, is your safety net. So.
Sorry, question?
May I? Chair, thank you. I'm not following the ball on this one. What is your understanding as to why this is happening?
So let's just focus on the Carmel River column. So they have rights to 3,376 acre feet. So at the end of the water year, which is 2 months away, you'd want to be pretty close to that. Right now, due to well capacity and demand, they're going to be in the 450 to 500 acre feet per month those remaining 2 months. So let's say you're going to get 900. You're going to end up finishing at 2,700, and you've left 600 acre feet in the river. You go to the next column, they're overtaxing the Seaside groundwater basin. So it's how come we can't get that extra 600? Well, one answer would be, well, we got lucky, it rained, and we got 511 acre feet, and we renamed it Table 13. What we really want is it to be additive in a rainy season. You've got your 3376 and whatever you can capture as Table 13. So right now they're kind of offsetting, but you didn't get that extra bump. And so it's that extra bump that you have under your existing water right. And the way you can't get at it is either you don't have the well capacity, which I think is an issue here that we need to investigate further, or that the timing didn't work, that you could reverse the flow for a month. I mean, if they weren't pulling any Pure Water Monterey water in June, and we've quit doing injection to the ASR at the end of May by our water right, well, there was 1 month where they didn't need the Monterey pipeline necessarily moving water north to south. Could the flow have been reversed for a 1 month period? We did discover in February that the reversal of flow and changing the system has its consequences as well, because you're moving pressure areas and you can have some leaking and so forth. But it's crying out for some conversation between us and Cal-Am as to what can be done so that you don't leave 600 acre feet on the table.
Are we having any of those conversations at this point?
I put on a call to Chris on Wednesday, but he was out of town. So we'll take all of this in conjunction with our quarterly water budget setting and so forth. But
It's
yeah, it's going to be
intentional?
pardon?
This would be intentional on their part? Or could it be an oversight?
It wouldn't be an oversight. It would be the constraints all lined up to make it difficult to get everything you can get. And so what do we learn in the ASR season? We got to remove constraints. What are we learning here? January 1 of 2021, they promised to finally be within their limit on the river. And there was a whole bunch of discussion about how challenging that's going to be because they're going from 7,000 acre feet per year or 6,000 acre feet per year. 3376 was going to be really hard. And here we might not even see them at 2,900. That's not the way it should be. So we will be kind of looking into, this is a compliance report. They're definitely in compliance on the river, but who would have thought it'd be this far? So that's pretty much all I have to report on this GM report.
Ian?
And so there's nothing we can do to make them comply. I mean, what I'm getting to is, constraints and challenges. But I agree with you. Couple 100 acre feet, that has to be something we go to the mat to maximize. We can't sit there and just allow them, and intentional or not, we don't know. But how can we as a group say, well, it's okay this year, 600 acre feet, 700 acre feet next year, 800, it's just,
yeah.
right?
And
so,
and to your point, really not okay.
well, no, it's okay if we don't do nothing about it. And so that's the thing is, is there a standard, is there a level that we can get through legally to how can we make them maximize it, giving you guys enough information where you feel comfortable by saying, well, this year it was a whole bunch of challenges and we know we're going to leave 200 acre feet in the river. But if we don't start saying, and we may not have the ability to see the inner workings, and if we don't, then we'll talk about it all the time. But 600, 500, 400 acre feet every couple of years adds up, and it's not adding up to the benefit of, our constituents.
If I may comment, we are certainly not the operator. Cal-Am is the operator. So we are observing how they're operating. We're still identifying what the reasons they have for this. Is it intentional? Is it just beyond their control from their perspective? And so I think we're fact gathering. Once we put the water year to rest and we then see what in fact they did, then we can talk about what action mode we can take as a regulator. Cal-Am has multiple regulators, the Public Utilities Commission, as well as this district. Cal-Am's in the middle of a general rate case. This is quite interesting information and data that can be put into testimony with respect to Cal-Am's operations and what Cal-Am's needs are. Do they need more equipment? Do they need, the point being, when they make a decision, if their decision is to use more expensive rather than less expensive water, that certainly affects the ratepayer. And the question is that prudent operation? And should Cal-Am have the freedom from the PUC to operate that way? And then we are a regulator ourselves. I'm not suggesting that we jump the gun in terms of regulating. We do have the annual budget. When we put this water year to bed, we'll be talking about the next water year. And then we should have that in mind, find out what Cal-Am is willing to agree to as the regulated. And then if what Cal-Am is proposing is not sufficient, then I think we have some regulatory powers ourselves that we could impose upon Cal-Am. But at this point, I think it's premature to say, what can we do or what should we do to Cal-Am? I think we need to find out a bit more as to what is their take on this. Certainly, this is not a good situation to be in.
No, I don't think it's premature to ask what we can do, because you laid it out, which is, I know this year's passed, right? And I know you're gathering information, But as you gather information and come back, we need to be prepared to hear what we can do. And so I know we're not going to do nothing tonight, but if we leave here tonight saying that we're not concerned, we're just asking questions and we don't plan on doing anything, then we're going to find ourselves next year the same way. So I'm willing to wait for your guys to come back, council and district manager to come back and say what are some of the opportunities and choices that and that we can make. But I just want to put that on record, which is it has to be something we can say or something we can do.
Amy next.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the problems that they've been having or that they have been having through, maybe their own choices of not getting the well situation taken care of. That's been years that they have known that. And that they repaired it, but also taking water out of a source that is an emergency source and doing the cheaper water and all that. None of that is, that's got to be purposeful. I mean, I don't know what the purpose is, but they chose to do it and they've got to fix their equipment. I mean, that's hurting all of us. And it certainly did last year when we had that huge amount of rain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what we discover more and more is we tend to look at, as resource manager, at the system as a whole, and we can say, they've got this much water and they've got a system, it should balance out. But there's, I believe, 6 major pressure zones. And now we're beginning to learn that there are, internal barriers to getting water from one place to the other where it's needed. And that can be at the source. You don't have enough capacity to get it out of the ground. Or as we've learned, it can be a pipeline where we could have gotten more to ASR, but pipeline can only work in one direction at one time. And then our wells on this end. So it's a combination of all these things, but the specific answer to this question it really needs to be looked at, because what's the one thing we could do first, meaning we collectively with Cal-Am, to take the biggest bite out of this problem? And it might be just getting a well online. Well, then let's not see a deferral, that kind of thing.
Okay, we have, I think, George and then Karen.
My quick, it's a path of least resistance, I think, for Cal-Am. They did this with the extraction well. That was the injection well. The least resistant was continue with what they had the opportunity to use in the past without building the new wells that you were talking about, path of least resistance. I'm assuming they're hooked up now to run out of the groundwater basin, seaside. And I think they're just not looking at changing it. So it's path of least resistance. I just encourage you to, hit the table a few times when you're talking to them.
Karen.
Just a comment in response to what Mayor Oglesby said about doing nothing. As General Counsel told us, we are currently in fact-finding mode. So we do need to really find out why they made the decisions they made, okay, and have a better understanding. That doesn't mean we do nothing. I think, Dave Stolt is, the purpose would be to figure out how to prevent this from happening again next year or subsequent years, or what kind of infrastructure solutions are needed, or and timing and so on. But fact finding is the first step before we can really start figuring out possible solutions. So I think that's where we are.
Great. Okay, any other comments? Any comments from the public?
Yep, Michael Bear has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Bear.
Are you going to take them on?
Actually, why don't we wait until the end of the
Usually
whole
you take them
GM's report? Yeah,
Oh,
thank you very much for reminding me. Okay,
Right.
that's okay. No, it's me.
And let's go all the way
Let's-
through to the end of this one. Then
And then we'll go to item 9 and 10, and then we'll take public
So item
comment.
9, just a slight update. You may be aware, maybe not, Pure Water Monterey construction was awarded August 14th, and a notice to proceed was given. And so they should be, oh, actually, that was a notice to proceed. They awarded July 31st. And so that's the advanced water purification facility improvements. The rebid of the injection field, the bids will be open September 7th. And it's hoped that a notice to proceed is done by early October. And the injection well field is not the critical path. So it's really the advanced water purification facility that drives the 24-month to 26-month construction schedule. So that's all good news. I have nothing to report on the desalination project other than the quarterly progress report was released in July. You could read it online. Didn't describe many changes, and there's nothing that's been announced in a Form 10Q or an investor's report in August. So I have nothing to report on the desalination. Item 10, we do have a PowerPoint for that, I believe. And this was a requested update on the acquisition of the Monterey Water System, or Measure J. And we'll give one more attempt at the controls here if you'd get me started. Yep. Yep. Great. So how did we get here? Measure J passed in 2018 with a fairly significant majority. In effect saying if and when feasible, we are to own all water systems within our service area. This is a mechanism to basically allow the voters to create law. It established a new rule under our rules and regs through an ordinance that's not reversible without another vote of the public. A reminder of why we would pursue public ownership at all. Lower cost to operate, hopefully better quality of service, local governance and greater transparency, and a reminder that 85% of all urban water in California is, there we go. Next, just hit forward, please. I've lost it. 85% of all urban water in California is supplied by municipal agencies. So we're not inventing a new wheel of any kind. Activities to date, we have 4 phases of this whole project. Phase 1 was proving financial feasibility, took about a year. That was November 2019. The phase 2 was an EIR, which took almost a year and was decided to be pursued to support our LAFCO application. And we were sued over the EIR and it was later upheld by the courts. And we applied to LAFCO originally in October of 2020 and went through quite a bit of give and take with requests for information, requests for consultants. You may remember some of these excruciating periods of time. We had to update our resolution at least one additional time. We had to update our application. We had to do quite a bit of third-party research on tax impacts and so forth. We thought that would be done in December of 2021, but it was ultimately, we did get our annexation approved and our sphere of influence and municipal services review was approved. What wasn't approved was our attempt to clarify the activation of latent powers. We asked for reconsideration, which ultimately was denied in early February of 2022. Then we entered phase 3, which was a formal appraisal and an offer. We made the offer April 3rd of this year, and that was rejected by CalAm April 28th. And so on April 29th, we basically entered phase 4. Next slide, please, Christina. So what is phase 4? Phase 4 is considering the actual eminent domain action, the lawsuit. The pros and cons will be presented to you shortly. We'll talk about schedule in a second. But there are several major hurdles, which are just summarized here in bullet point fashion, whether it's in the public interest and necessity to require the proposed public use. The proposed public use in this case is converting from private ownership to public ownership with the perceived benefits that were outlined earlier. Lower cost to ratepayers, better quality of service, greater transparency and governance. Whether that proposed public use is planned or located in a manner that's most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury, whether the public sought to be acquired is necessary for that proposed public use, and whether the proposed public use is more necessary than the current use. And those will be the key findings that you would have to embrace in a resolution of necessity. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at schedule-wise is you will have a closed session to consider entering into litigation or condemnation action on September 7th. And you'll discuss some of the merits of these key findings. You'll discuss some of the other underlying evidence of support for those findings. You'll discuss some of the legal issues that have come up, pros and cons relative to moving forward with that litigation. If you choose to move forward, then on September 8th, we will file a notice of the hearing to consider a resolution of necessity. California American Water must be notified. The named owner of the parcels subject to the condemnation has to be notified. So there's we've got 104 parcels. They're all the same PO box that they just changed from Camden, New Jersey they moved it from one New Jersey post office to another one. I'm glad I caught it because the list that we had was all the old one. So anyway, our attorneys will be working on that. The company will have an opportunity to respond and indicate that they want to appear. Talk about that in just a second. Which they have to do within 15 days of us sending them that notification. And then it looks like either October 4th or October 12th will be the public hearing. And I say public's invited. We're currently looking for a venue. I do appreciate all of your responses because all 3 dates I put out seem to work for you. But based on venue and time and cost, it'll likely be one of these 2 October dates. So you can kind of hold those open. And then within 2 to 3 months, I think we actually have 6. If you choose to move forward and actually adopt the resolution of necessity, then the condemnation action will be filed in Superior Court. Next slide. Now, this title is not obvious areas of disagreement. I apologize. These are the things that CalAm may object to. They can, at our hearing, which very likely they will exert their administrative remedies. So they'll come and object to the taking of the property. They may contend that the conditions required have been made appropriately. We're highly confident that we did the offer as required by the government code on April 3rd. But what won't be discussed at all in this hearing, should you decide to move forward with it, is the value. Price is not the issue. It's the public benefit issue that will be addressed. Next slide, please. And I just like this slide so much from our earlier meeting, I just repeated it here.
That's great.
So we're again on our way. I know people have been wondering what's been going on. Just last week, Dan Turner come speak with us often, said, what's going on with this whole thing? You got to get moving. I said, well, hopefully you're watching. Check and see if Dan's watching. But people have been wondering, and I think that's a pretty clear schedule, that this will either be moving forward or put to bed by you at your discretion, should you choose to have that public hearing. So, any questions? I'm happy to take.
Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Riley?
They'll be making a spirit or something like that. I thought, is that outside the schedule?
No, it will be, so we give them a notice of the hearing. And the requirement under the law is the owner, as it appears on the assessor's roll, has to be notified of the property you are taking. Now, this is complex because we've got over 100 parcels. They're all listed as California American Water. Occasionally, they're listed as California American Water, General Tax Group. But they all have the same address. They're all going to basically in care of American Water in New Jersey. So, we hope to sweep together by sending the letter. Oh, it's by first class mail. So obviously the law was written at a time that, so we'll send to the president, the general counsel, and then to New Jersey. That's very likely going to cover the notice provision. In that notice provision, they will be told that if they want to be heard at your hearing, then they have to let us know within 15 days of that notice. And so they would be appearing at the hearing for consideration.
For us, make some comment because we're headed for court.
Yep.
And so their opportunity to present is court environment, not this environment.
But they would come to you to say, here's why your whole logic is wrong. Here's what you're going to be burdening the community with, any series of arguments to say.
You have an obligation to hear them
Yeah.
before you act on the resolution of necessity. They may say whatever they choose to say at that time, and then you then have the power to proceed to consider the resolution and act as you choose on the resolution.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, are there any questions from the board on anything in items 8, 9, and 10? Seeing none, are there any questions from the public on items 8, 9, or 10?
I do see Michael Bear still has his hand
Michael
raised.
Bear, your hand is up. You're on.
Thank you. Yeah. September 7th, long time waiting. So that's my comment on number 10. Thank you for all the hard work. And we're getting there. So that's exciting. I want to go back to number 8 and the whole thing about leaving the cheapest water in the river, which, I've been following this for over 10 years and duh, of course you leave the cheapest water in the river. You're in you're in the profit making business. So 600 acre feet is a lot of water, like 5%, right? I mean, we don't use 12,000. It's a lot of our budget. And the answer is, am I missing something? Because if I recall in the winter, we had all that rain, including March being very, very wet. The river's high, and I'm excited. I haven't talked to you guys for a couple months. How's ASR going? Well, not so good because Cal-Am is using pumps to use the water that's from Monterey One water. The solution, water management, you guys have it nailed. What are they doing? Public necessity, and when the water's in the river and it's flowing, that is the water you use to give to the people. And you can also get it flowing in that direction to fill ASR. The water should all be flowing from the river towards the peninsula when the water's high. Now they're trying to use, the reason they don't have the water is the river's low and they can't get the water out fast enough. In the meantime, we didn't get to put the ASR in because they were using pumps to use Monterey 1 water. This seems very obvious to me that the solution is to take all the rainwater that flows down the river and give it to the people in the winter, then use the recycled water and give it to the people in the summer and have the water go the other way. What am I missing? It seems obvious. You should demand that they do that next winter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Are there any other hands raised?
Susan Giovannis.
Susan, you're up. Can you find your mute button?
Got it. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to add the comment. I'm really glad that it's coming to where you get to vote on this issue with Measure J. And as you know, I'm a full supporter of a public water agency. I just wanted to add my comment to CalAm. Their lack of completion of infrastructure and projects that were already approved is once again affecting the efficiency of the water system. And that is just not okay, as you say, and I hope you can resolve this. This is going on a year, and I'm wondering if in California law, I don't know how long, but I heard that if you don't use a water right, you start to lose a water right. So I'm sure that this is just a short-term thing, but if that's an issue, that's another reason it's pretty serious. And then the other thing was using Seaside Basin water in lieu of the water that's cheapest is serious to me because it's already a very seriously overdrafted basin. And there was supposed to be a direction where they were trying to store more water in the basin to help replenish it and reduce the seawater risk. And then also, it's very questionable because you're using it's questionable behavior from them in my book because you're using a resource that's very tenable rather than one that you have for sure. And that's just really not good at all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanni. Are there any other hands raised?
I see no other hands raised.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will close that item. I don't think we have any motions that are needed at this point. And move on to report from District Council, an update on pending litigation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. I'm going to report on 4 items of pending litigation. This is just to give a status and a timing review. The sequence that I'm reporting on is from the nearest scheduled item to those that are scheduled out in the future. The first item is the Marina versus the City of Marina and the Water Management District versus the California Coastal Commission. This is the challenge on CalAm's coastal development permit from the Coastal Commission. There's a case management conference on this matter tomorrow morning before Judge Wills. The issues there are going to be the timing of the administrative record, the status of the pleadings, whether or not there will be motions filed, and ultimately the type of discovery and the maneuverings that are going to be in that case before we have an estimate as to the trial. At the moment, the administrative record is planned by the Coastal Commission to be circulated for a review at the end of October, but that would be their draft of the record, and that's before we get a chance to see if we believe that it is complete and needs to be augmented. We are anticipating that there will be Public Records Act requests of the parties in addition to augment the record and some discovery. The petitioners, the City of Marina, Monterey 1 Water, and the district have estimated the trial could begin in May of next year. The Coastal Commission has stated to the judge in their case management statement that that is wildly optimistic and it is not likely to occur anywhere near that time. But the bottom line is that this case will not be heard before next summer. Looking at the district's challenge to LAFCO, there's been a lot of tentative false starts in terms of when the trial on the merits would be. We did get a firm commitment from Judge Wills last week that and in answer to Mr. Baer's comments, we did get a commitment that September 21st will be the hearing on the trial of the merits in Department 15 before Judge Wills. That is anticipated to be a one-day hearing. I don't know if we'll get a tentative ruling. I don't know if we'll get any indication from the bench, but I believe after the 21st, the matter will be submitted to the judge, and we will then be awaiting a decision by the judge on that matter. Whether it will be immediate or sometime thereafter, that's anyone's guess. The third matter actively before us is CalAm's application to the Public Utilities Commission for approval of their general rate case. That's the 3-year rate cycle that CalAm uses to set rates and charges. And when they get to decide, the PUC gets to decide what regulations apply to the profits that CalAm wants to make. There was a mediation this morning setting forth possible settlement concepts. There's really nothing to report there. There's a status conference for the case that's going to be heard, a phone call that's going to be heard the first week in September, September 7th. And this leads up to the 8 days of planned testimony. The hearings are spread 8 days in October, October 5, 6, 9, 10, 13, 16, 19, and 20. So it's all over the place. Those are all going to be remote hearings, which are very much more, they're not as efficient as hearings that are held live. And then after the hearings do close, then there's a period of post-hearing briefs, and then it goes into the black hole of the PUC for decision-making, and it will arise on its own schedule. And then finally, there's the valuation workshop. That's where the Public Utilities Commission is holding a workshop in terms of what considerations should be given by the acquisition of new systems, systems that are in distress or otherwise by public utilities. The third workshop in that case has been concluded, but the step now is that there will be a report on that workshop that the PUC issues, and then that report is subject to comments by the various parties. There was a significant delay from the second workshop to the second report, or report on the second workshop, and I would anticipate that there will be a similar delay here. And the date of the report itself, it would be anyone's guess at this point. That concludes my report on matters that are pending through my office.
Thank you very much.
One quick
Yes.
clarification on the Coastal Commission. I think you inadvertently said the 3 petitioners included Monterey One Water. It's City of Marina, Marina Coast Water District, and ourselves.
Excuse me.
And we did file comments on the second report on the valuation proceeding, which quickly received reply comments from CalAm. It's pretty much in 100% disagreement with our comments. Go figure.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. Any member of the board wish to make any question or comment? Thank you. Yes.
Is there a status update on perfecting the record in the taxpayer case on appeal, or is that not even?
The record still is at the Superior Court and has not yet been transmitted to the appellate court.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much for your question. Any member of the public who wishes to make a comment or ask a question on this report?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will close item number 11 with thanks to our general counsel and go to director's report, including NAAB 1234 reports on trips, conferences, attendance, and meetings. Mr. Riley, your name is on here as always reporting, so thank you.
Water Management Committee, and they were discussing some details that I had been raising questions about, and that I had not done my homework, and I kind of went with the crowd, and then I came home this afternoon and did my homework, and was sorry I didn't disagree with the crowd, because I have a very different opinion about validity of what they were doing. So anyway, I'm kind of reporting this for its benefit as well. So tomorrow I plan on reporting back to the committee saying I was unprepared. I'm sorry I agreed with what I did agree with. I no longer agree with it, and I'm going to ask that it be resubmitted to the committee for review. That's I didn't represent you well, but I did.
Well,
I did go.
your diligence is totally appreciated, honestly. Anyone else with comments or any AB 1234s? Okay, nothing. All right. With that, we will close item 12. We've already heard 13. With that, now we will go to item number 14, which is consider adoption of an urgency ordinance regarding second bathroom protocol. I was just going to say bathroom protocol, but that just didn't sound right. Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Stephanie Locke, and for some reason I cannot get my video to start because the host has stopped it. I don't know,
Sorry,
but I can go ahead without it, obviously. But
We can
No,
hear you.
we have the PowerPoint,
Yeah.
so it'll be on the screen.
I'll just go ahead and go with this. So this should be a short item for you. This item is to consider adoption of an urgency ordinance that will clarify our Rule 24 second bathroom protocol. And sorry, since I can't see that, make it to that point. So basically the second bathroom protocol was adopted in 2001. And what it does is allow people who have less, actually what it was originally was if you only had one bathroom in your house, it would allow you to add a second bathroom under the premise that it was for convenience only. And so this would allow somebody to be able to add a second bathroom. If you had a bathroom and a half, you could add a bathtub to the second bathroom to create 2 full bathrooms. And again, this was for convenience only. It does not debit an allocation or an entitlement. So all of the CEQA findings that were adopted as part of the original negative declaration to put this into place said that there is no new water demand associated with adding a second bathroom, that it just is for quality of life standards and does not add water use. So just coincidentally, in the last week, we had 2 people, and you can go to the next slide.
Hold on. Can you give me 1 minute? I'm having an issue with it.
Okay.
Just sorry. Apologies.
And Christina, if you can't go to it, I'll just continue talking. That's fine.
Let me see, maybe, Sarah, do you think you could share?
That's okay, because there's really not much more to this report. So anyway, coincidentally, in the last week, we had 2 instances where people had taken advantage or had removed water fixtures from a second bathroom that they already had and used those water fixtures to create other uses on the site because it was a water credit, and now want to come back and add the fixtures back in using the second bathroom protocol, which clearly defies the intent of this convenience only. So the proposed ordinance just is to clarify that if somebody has used credit from a bathroom, that they would not qualify to use the second bathroom protocol moving forward. This is an urgency ordinance, so it does require 5 members of the board to approve. It would take effect immediately and last for 1 year. We do intend to come forward with a number of ordinance changes and amendments in the future, so it would be included in that future ordinance. You'd have another bite at the apple, so to speak. But like I said, again, it's just the concern is that there's a CEQA exemption and that what has been proposed really needs to be shut down so that we don't have any issues with our CEQA findings. So this evening, the recommendation is to have the board approve the ordinance to disqualify dwelling units that use credit from removing bathroom fixtures. And we will bring this back again for more review this year. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from members of the board for this item? Yes, Mark.
Hi, thank you. When this came up in finance, I think there was one incident. Now we're hearing we're up to 3.
No, there were 2 recently.
Okay.
One of them, the 2 that came up, one took out bathroom fixtures to assign to a vacant lot next door so they could build a new house. And
So,
go ahead.
so a couple of questions. Maybe this would be for district council. Without this ordinance, on these 2 occasions, is the district within its rights to say no?
Well, I don't know what action was already taken on that, but I do believe that a literal ruling of our rules would put us in jeopardy by not applying the rules as they're written. And that's why this has come forward. But I do believe that this does not have retroactive effect. And therefore, if someone did come through and complete that process, then whatever the staff's decision had been made, unless it's been appealed but to the board, would stand.
Right, but Mike, but the fact that this is putting the CEQA, this is creating a CEQA problem by interpreting the statute the way these 2 homeowners are doing. That's a level of exposure. I mean, mustn't we construe the ordinance as it is in a way that doesn't jeopardize CEQA? I mean, I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but it's not that 2 people are getting another bathroom. It's neither here nor there. We could fix that prospectively. But the fact that it's happened twice, is there a risk here?
I believe there's a risk if we don't enact an ordinance. So the way you originally phrased the question was, if we didn't do this ordinance, are we exposed? And I think the answer is clearly, because people are good at gaming our system once they figure something out. And it's, there's another example that I'm not sure we want to let out all the little secrets, but if you did it,
don't go there.
Thank you, but I don't think that that's good here.
Second bathroom protocol, that if you had a second bathroom, you did a junior ADU and you split your house.
Right.
Now you'll have a second user, which completely flies in the face of the convenience finding under CEQA, because it's not for your convenience.
It's more water. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've heard the presentation. Thank you, Stephanie, for the presentation. Are there any questions, any additional questions or comments from the board? Yeah.
You finally crack it on, you go through it, it's double dipping, but you get, because the law doesn't cover it.
Yeah. Good.
Closing a loophole. Does this mean that any adjustment to the language would need to be made, or just find the way it stands?
That's what's proposed before you in the ordinance. Is that the language, page 301 in your board packet, in section 3.
Oh, yes, thank you. Now I remember.
But an emergency ordinance only has a 1-year life, and so we'd have to correct it through a regular first reading, second reading, cleanup ordinance.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right. So is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item? Mr. Rowley.
Yeah, good evening, resident of Monterey. City of Monterey has already cracked down on this. And this is by the development director at one of the, I think at the planning commission, announced that can't do it. So it's basically supporting what you're proposing doing here. So yeah, and fairness, we need to be fair. I was around when they put the second bathroom ordinance and passed that, and it was a godsend. But it's not a loophole for adding second units. So if you can't add a second unit, that's more people, and then expands the capacity or whatever you need for more water. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you. I remember when this happened, and I think it was a family in Pacific Grove. It was mom, a dad, and 3 daughters. And he was waiting in line every morning for all 3 of those girls to go through. And he realized, I'm not going to use any more water. I'm just going to save a little time here. At any rate, thank you again for the presentation, Stephanie. I think that was excellent. So now we need to have a motion to recommend the board that we will have an ordinance that clarifies that fixtures in a second bathroom are not to be removed to add water fixtures elsewhere and then reinstalled using the Rule 24 second bathroom protocol. Could we have a motion to that effect? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you very much. All in favor,
No,
please?
Madam Chair. This is an ordinance. Our enabling act requires all ordinances go by roll call.
Thank you very much. Yes. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Director Oglesby? Director Paul?
Yes.
Director Eisenhart?
Aye.
Director Riley? Director Edwards? Vice Chair Anderson? Yes. And Chair Adams?
Aye. Thank you very much.
As an emergency ordinance, that takes effect tonight at midnight.
Thank you very much. So there you have it. Thank you, Stephanie. I hope that you're pleased with that. Okay, moving forward now, we will go to item 15, which is an action item and considering approval of a contract with Rincon Consultants for environmental consulting services for an addendum to the EIR for future district water allocation process.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think the staff note summarizes all of it. This is a request for their proposed budget plus 10% contingency. We do have a budget line item that's already envisioned that there would be these expenditures. And the attachment 15A is the technical memorandum that the Water Demand Committee was able to look at and reference and also recommend the hiring of Rincon to do the addendum. So with that, I would look to questions or a motion.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Riley.
Yeah, so this is directly linked to item 17, and I'll address that.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board? Nope. Any questions? Anybody in the public wish to make comment or question on this item?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes.
On page 309, second paragraph under proposed allocation. The first sentence, allocations are not expected to not dictate. I think we don't want not in there.
Right.
Okay, we'll make that, I think we can just make that change. Did you see it was page 309? Second paragraph under proposed allocation.
Gotcha.
Great. Thank you guys for being such excellent, both readers and devourers and proofreaders as well.
Much appreciated.
Okay, and I think that since it is a contract approval, we'll need to have a motion.
I move.
Thank you. Second? Okay, great. It's not, doesn't require a roll call vote, so all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstains. Thank you very much. That moves us into now item number 16, which is to consider authorizing the general manager to approve additional funding for Rivtelis in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
In a similar fashion, I think the staff note explains everything. We went $2,250 over the authorization. I have no real plans to use the full $20,000 from Rivtelis, but there may be something unforeseen as we move into this period of findings and consideration of a resolution of necessity or a filing for condemnation. So this is just to get a little additional room under the bar so that we can pay bills.
Keep moving forward. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comment from the public?
I
With
see
that-
no, I'm sorry. I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we will take a motion to approve this.
And you know, they're the type of folks where we may have a question that comes up about low-income ratepayer assistance. So can show us, remind the board that the numbers work based on our tax collections, something simple like that.
I so moved.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. All right, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, thank you. With that, we will close item number 16. And we are into discussion items.
Yeah, this is item 17. Christine, are we working yet on sharing?
I'm hoping.
Because the printed version in your folder, some of them may only be single sheets, missing every other page.
Oh. I didn't notice that.
So let's glance at the screen because it seems to be working.
Yeah, mine's.
Oh, yeah.
Every
That's
other-
funny. I didn't even pick that up.
It's only funny if you're not the guy giving the presentation, you is there a graphic there?
Moving forward.
So what do we think?
I'd see. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Hold on.
And I got so excited, it was a short presentation.
It'll be relatively short. And Christine is wondering how to grow a third arm right now. Welcome to
got a lot going on,
welcome to the
too.
district. Yeah.
Goodness.
No, why it's not starting.
We could have just called it creative pagination and got it past us.
Doesn't want to go. Can you see it? You can see it, right? There.
Can see it, but can you advance?
Can you fast forward it, rather?
Yep. Did you want me to go further?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, next slide, please. Thanks.
Okay.
You can always try the arrow keys if
They're not working. So, okay. I'm doing that and it's not showing. I apologize. My screen is not showing it. Sarah, can you share your screen, please?
All right.
While we're waiting, going back to the October hearing, what are the venues that are in the running?
We looked at Ms. Has Irvine Lecture Hall, Carpenter Hall at
Terrible.
Sunset Center.
Mm.
We've done some things there. It's not the best, yeah. I don't know, there's 4 of them, I think, that we're looking at.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, Oldemeyer Center.
Right. Yeah, what was the other one?
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so what's involved in an allocation process? It's been since the early 90s that we last did one. But the idea, the concept, and the reason we did it in the first place is we, the resource manager, wanted to be able to count water as it goes out so we knew how much of a scarce resource was remaining at any point in time, and that we could better identify our needs. Now, to be honest, certain jurisdictions allocated their total allocation very quickly. Other jurisdictions didn't. But then the moratorium came along many years later, and so there were jurisdictions, actually Seaside's a great example of where they have allocation, but they're a lot of raw land development and they can't set a meter. Whereas Pacific Grove gave a lot of its allocation out, and mostly renovations and on existing sites. no water available. So it means different things in different jurisdictions. But the process is to identify how much water supply you have readily available on a predictable basis. So there's a water supply analysis. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Then you project your water demand, current and future needs. And then you take a portion of the available water to meet future needs and you allocate it to your jurisdictions and your special entities. By special entities, I mean Navy, Army, Coast Guard, airport primarily. Next slide, please.
Sarah?
Oh, she's controlling it.
Mhm.
So on the water supply side, you identify existing and new water supply sources, but not all the new water supply sources available for new growth. Where we're at right now, if you kind of did the math, we're about 1,300 acre feet to maybe 1,000 acre feet short every day. So when I talk about the concern that I have getting through the build out of the expansion, is we've got to meet that 1,000 to 1,300 acre feet because current demand exceeds the firm supply that we have. So you make it up with ASR, table 13, both of which require rain. Eventually ASR won't require rain on a regular ongoing basis because it's building up its savings from multiple years of good rain and normal rain to offset the bad years. But in the meantime, you're hoping that Sand City's being productive instead of being offline, that we do have rain for table 13 and so forth. You determine the capacity available under both normal dry and multiple dry years. We've been looking at susceptibility of the pure water expansion in multiple dry years. We know what the climate data looks like for ASR, and so we can kind of line those up, and we know all the years by their water type, all the way from critically dry to very wet. And so we're going to do some alternate analyses. And then you can also factor in things like the payback to the Seaside groundwater basin. You could start that immediately, or you could wait 5 years and then start it. All of these scenarios are going to assume no desalination plant because we don't foresee that factors into this allocation round. But you're going to have some surplus in the immediate years when Pure Water Monterey comes online. There's not demand for all 2,250 acre feet. So even if you take the first 1,000 off for our relative shortfall, there's this other 1,250 acre feet that you're not going to grow into right away. And so we have to look at scenarios that put water in the ground and carry it over. So there'll be a whole variety of scenarios, and then we will take a look and try to select the best kind of averaging or the most typical of the water supply alternatives and say, okay, that's our available supply. Next slide, Sarah, or whomever. On the demand side, then you compare that to our current existing demand, probably more like 5 years of existing demand. And you allocate part of this new supply or this available supply to that shortfall. You look at the remainder, and that's your new supply to meet future demand. And then you're going to estimate your future residential demand either through the growth forecast for population or the RENA housing numbers, because they don't line up despite all of AMBAG's assurances. And the same thing on non-residential, forecasted job growth and the special entity needs. You combine them together and you say, all right, and again, because RENA doesn't quite match population, and we have this problem, boy, if you look at it, City of Monterey needs 3,654 new housing units per RENA, per the 25-year Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Regional Growth Forecast. Their population's only expected to grow 1,500 people. So in that instance, you've got 2.3 homes per person of population growth instead of 2.3 people per home. So that is a confusing RENA versus population outcome. Sand City is the opposite. They have a huge 211% anticipated population growth, over 1,000 people, I think. And as does Delray Oaks, about 1,000 people on their current 1,600 population. But their RENA housing numbers are very small. And so they're showing more people than housing, and Monterey is showing more housing than people. So there's a little bit of a mismatch. And so our approach will be to suggest kind of a combination of the two. And we're not trying to satisfy all of it anyway, which you'll see in a second. So then you compare your supply versus demand. Next slide, please. And we will generate a proposal to take to the TAC, which is made up of the cities and the airport district. And we'll say only a portion of future demands should be met. And that's where we're going to make an initial suggestion based on these numbers. So we'll be able to show where the numbers come from, what they represent. But the goal is not to, even to tell Carmel that you're going to get all 349 RENA houses taken care of today, because that's way more housing units than what their population forecast shows. And they haven't come up with a perfect plan yet to where to put those. So every jurisdiction will be told, here's a portion of your demand. I think we're kind of leaning towards a third of your future need, but there will be some discussion, clearly discussion. And the rest of the unallocated water will sit in the district reserve so that we can start a new allocation process at any time if City A is growing faster than City B, or two cities are growing faster than the other four. It will require an ordinance because we, the district, memorialize these allocations in our rules, and we memorialize what goes in the district reserve in our rules. So there will be an ordinance. And so all of that affects schedule. Next slide. Thank you. So this is, and this will go to the timing on the CEQA. So we should be able to start CEQA next week. As I have mentioned, it's an addendum. It's not going to take a lot of new analysis. We hope to get letters out to the special entities regarding their future plans, because captured in the AMBAG growth forecast through the job creation are kind of normal non-residential growth. And so what we're doing is using job growth as a proxy for non-residential water use. But, for example, Naval Postgraduate School wants to build an innovation center, $500 million, right? Close budget. But I'm not going to confirm or deny that. So there are some projects that we will know about. There are some projects we won't know about, and their timeline takes, we've met with the Navy and the Army at length over the years, and there are projects that have been waiting for funding for years and years. So we need a little nudge to their facility staff to say, what are you thinking of that we may have missed? How much new square footage for these kinds of purposes are you going to be seeing? How much will you be taking out, and so forth? So we'll try to guide them through to get a better sense of what their needs might be. Same thing with the airport master plan. We've all seen that, but they've sunk 2 new wells for some irrigation purposes and possibly for rental car usage. So we need to talk about, well, what are you building that's going to require water? How many square feet are you taking out, and so forth? So the special entities will be kind of on top of the job forecast proxy. So we have to get those letters out by mid-September. We'll take to our own water demand committee what our preliminary proposal looks like, thinking that October 2nd meeting, because the next chance would be in December. We will send out notification to schedule 2 technical advisory committee meetings with the jurisdictions in November and in January. The CEQA, RINCON has told us about 8 to 10 weeks for a draft for the district, review. So we're looking at 10 to 12 weeks for bringing that back. So I thought we could bring it in, worst case, the December board meeting for certification. And then a second technical advisory committee meeting under the assumption that they're going to make certain requests of us to make revisions or to consider alternative scenarios, bring it back to the cities and the special entities at that meeting, update our water demand committee at the February meeting that's still to be scheduled, an update to our board at the board meeting in February, then hold a policy advisory committee, which is mayors and city managers, or city council members, depending on who's appointed whom. That would be you jointly with their representatives. And then hopefully everyone is in agreement by that point in time. And we'd have a first reading of an ordinance in April, a second reading in May. I've mentioned that the construction period is about 24 months, possibly 26 months. So in my opinion, the last target date to be done would be August 31st. So we've got some room in there. Next slide. So we need to be flexible. But I think that's a good start. If we push the front end things out the door, then it just comes down to how on the same page is the TAC. Does our board agree with the TAC recommendations? Do we want to take that to the PAC? And then if there's not significant firestorms of any kind, then we will do our adoptions. That's the process.
Or I've told us all this before, but, I want to hear it again. What are the big differences, the sources that make RENA and AMBEG so different?
Well, I could screen share two other presentations where I've shown why they're not supposed to be different and that AMBEG said they weren't different. AMBEG does 3 primary work products, one every 8 years, and that's the RENA. It's on an 8-year cycle. And they take what the state housing and community development tells them on a regional basis, and then they push that to, and it's either council of governments in some areas or the planning groups like AMBEG in other areas. And then they push that further down to the subregion so they can take an overall regional number, like in our case, split it really only between 2 counties because San Benito County has its own council of governments that does this work. And then they push it down to the 12 cities in Monterey County. And so we look at the city numbers. Then they also do a regional growth forecast every 4 years and a metropolitan transportation plan / sustainable communities strategy every 4 years combined. And that document is to look at the growth forecast and say, if our population is expected to be this over the next 25 years, do we have the transportation infrastructure to support it? Okay, we do or we don't. If we don't, here are things we need to look at as a community. And so that's every 4 years. And by law, it's on the same 8-year cycle as RENA. So this was one of those harmonic convergences of all 3. And you will read the regional growth forecast, and there's a table of job growth, population growth, and housing units, identical to the same tables in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan says this plan includes the 6th cycle RENA housing analysis. So as if they've planned for what RENA, their third product, says is going to be the need. And the 6th cycle plan has an adoption calendar. It says May 2022, AMBEG adopts Metropolitan Transportation Plan, keeping RENA in mind. So the RENA document says it, and the Metropolitan Transportation Plan says it. And this document says we rely on the regional growth forecast. So they're all tied together. Until you really look at the numbers at the sub-regional basis and you come up with these anomalies like, why do you need 3,654 units of housing under RENA for the city of Monterey, or just over 1,500 people expected to arrive in the population? So we will have high and low versions of what you need for people for each of the cities. I believe the county got a little susceptible to, in a good way, to the land watches of the world who said, you need to put more housing in the unincorporated county near the peninsula because that's where the jobs are. Well, when we started our supply and demand forecast, we said, the Central Valley element of their general plan is so tight. There's only like 138 housing units that were even considered. And September Ranch has their own water source, and Rancho Cañada Villages had their own water source. And the old airport is now a nursery, so they're not going to be building on that anytime soon. So we really discounted the county, unincorporated county, to about 300 housing units, most of which were going to be self-supplied. So the hit on Cal-Am wasn't very much. Well, their most recent site inventory accommodates about 1,600 housing units here on the Monterey Peninsula for unincorporated county. It's a big game changer. So we've got to do some of that kind of analysis. City of Monterey moved about 1,800 units, no, 2,100 units of their 3,600 to the old Fort Ord parcel. Well, that's going to be served by Marina Coast Water District. So now you get, close to 2/3 that's just moved off the Cal-Am side of the ledger. And we assumed only about 20%. So we got to go back in and look at the proposed housing elements for everybody and see how different they might be. But when you read the AMBAG documents, they're all self-referencing to the three big things that they do. And you just want to believe that you can just pick one, but they're not quite the same. So we believe more that people use water, not houses, that old saying. So we trust more in population, and they really extol the rigor of the testing of their model. I think this is the third cycle they've used this particular model. They compared it to State Department of Finance models and other models, and they seem to believe that it's a really good predictor of population, which is a driver. We're 2/3 residential water use on this peninsula. So people are a bigger driver than houses. And we're very concerned that houses won't get built in a timely fashion. You've got the mayor and city manager in Monterey saying, we're going to do our darndest to get it all in 8 years. And then you got Delray Oaks notice of preparation that clearly states, we don't have to build them. We have to entitle them. They may not all get done in 8 years, if any, So everyone has kind of a different mindset on this. But if the people come, that's what we're tracking. And so you want to get to a point where you allocate enough water for people and jobs and get to a point in the future where you can pause and then look backwards and say, are we going faster or slower than what our anticipation was? And is there a city going faster or slower? I'm willing to predict that Seaside and Monterey are going to be heavily dedicated and moving faster, at least for the first several hundred housing units. But, imagine City of Monterey, let's say they get to 350 new housing units. That would completely settle Carmel's number, but they'd only be 10% along their path in Monterey. So the dynamics of commitment are going to be different in different cities. So.
Is the sausage really going to be made during the TAC meetings?
Likely, because we would expect their technical people to come having previously spoken to their policy people, meaning a little bit of direction from city council.
Is it typical for, I'm new, right? So I've not done this before, right? Do board members, division directors ever attend the TAC meetings?
To observe, you could. We've never had.
Make faces, nothing?
So the last time we had anything of this import was our water supply charge, the implementation of the water supply charge in 2012. And it almost went just straight to the PAC because it was kind of a large scale policy change.
I think I'd be interested in sitting in on
Yeah,
the
me
TAC
too.
meetings. I mean, just watching and listening.
Well, in the early 90s, when we did this, there was a lot of divisiveness among the cities. And, you know, they went through a deep exercise of trying to identify lots and what they were going to build on and what their needs were. But no one wanted to get shortchanged, except one city that volunteered to be shortchanged. And then they had regime change, and they decided we shortchanged them, and they wanted the process looked at and subject to CEQA, which actually led to the analysis by Rincon as to whether we needed to go through CEQA again. So, but yeah, it would be entertaining.
I just want to throw in an argument that the transportation issues, the commute problems that I'm going to really talk about. And so you really want housing, more housing in Monterey than the population might justify, population growth might justify, because that's where the jobs are, and you're trying to accommodate that other problem too, or help solve that other problem. And so there's another factor in there that's just greater than the population growth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, this is a discussion item. I'm not sure we want to discuss how much housing or where it should be located. But I do want you to understand what the process for allocation.
I do have kind of it's not just a policy question, but a historical question, but our district does that, but not all public water supply agencies do this. Is that fair? I mean,
yes, because we count water as it goes out the door, and it's part of the building permit process. But all water suppliers on a 5-year cycle, so different than AMBAG's 4-year cycle, will prepare an urban water management plan, which has an entire supply versus demand analysis to it. And then there's also a water shortage contingency analysis that is appended to it.
But
so.
Requirements or those planning documents become an allocation process that's fixed the way ours is?
No.
Yeah. If I may, the original allocation arose because the cities were not able to divide up the water supply amongst themselves. And the Coastal Commission said that they would not certify any local coastal plans until the cities collectively decided how they were going to allocate the water. And the cities were not able to allocate the water themselves. So they came to this district and said, district, would you please allocate, participate in the allocation process? It was contentious. This board was divided because some of the board members wanted to focus only on water supply, not on water demand and allocation. And the cities actually asked the district to embark upon the allocation process. And the district then said, we don't have any money to do that. So the Coastal Commission actually made a grant of money to the district to run the allocation process at the requests of the cities.
But over
That's good
time,
history. That's good
other
history.
jurisdictions have begun to create similar but different programs. Not the least of which is just right here with the Fort Ord allocation. Marina Coast Water District allocated water to each former forum member. And so when you read about City of Monterey moving the number of units that it wants to the South Boundary Road site, that's going to be served by Marina Coast. I believe the allocation was somewhere near 64 acre feet, which is nowhere near enough to serve that number of housing units that they now have moved into that area. So they will have to negotiate with Marina Coast to get more than their Fort Ord allocation. The suburbs that
the housing because of the water problem?
Maybe, I can't really intuit what they did. But the suburban water users that get some Hetch Hetchy supply from San Francisco PUC, they all received an allocation. So East Palo Alto received a very tiny allocation based on historical use. And then Palo Alto and Mountain View grew towards East Palo Alto. And so when Amazon wanted to locate right there across from University Avenue in East Palo Alto offered money to Mountain View for a piece of its allocation of Hetch Hetchy water. So there are allocations in certain places, but not quite like what we do. There should be, because
Is this going to be fun for you? I think it's going to be.
So where we're at as a board and as a water district right now, ignoring the acquisition and Measure J, is we're trying to get a project built with Monterey One Water in 24 months, trying to get an allocation in place by the midway point of that 24 months. At that midway point, we want to start the lifting of the cease and desist order with the state water board, so they're ready to go at the end of the construction period. And we don't know what the politics of lifting the CDO is going to be relative to the desal plant dream. But the analysis that we're going to do is going to clearly show you that there's more than enough water in Pure Water Monterey to get you everything you need for minimum 20 years. That's my contention. So if you're comfortable with that, then we got to get the business community comfortable with saying enough is enough. Let's lift this moratorium so that when the project comes online, we can set meters so that then the housing advocates who need to do large scale raw land development that require meters will have their meters ready to go when the water's there. So this is a real, I don't know if you use the word fun, but it's a real important 2-year period for the condition of water supply on the Monterey Peninsula, whether you're a mayor and city council who's only concerned about your housing numbers, or you're a water geek who's just more concerned about setting a meter or lifting a CDO. They're all coming together at once.
Yeah, that's good.
So
that's good.
I'm going to move this further along.
Yeah, please.
I appreciate this, a very interesting and robust discussion. And I thank you for the presentation. Will we be able to get an amended copy of the handout so that we could keep that?
Yeah, we can do that. We'll send it tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. That'd be just terrific. All right, any member of the board wish to make comment or question in addition to what we've already heard?
Only just in follow-up to what you just now said, page 6, which is the one, it's even numbered, so it's missing. I really like that chart. I hope to see it again because it keeps us honest about it.
I agree. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. So we'll go out to the public. Mr. Alley.
Yes, Tom Alley, resident of Monterey, intimately familiar with the development of the new housing elements, which all the land use jurisdictions are responsible for having, as Mr. Mayor here knows, by December of this year, in which where they're going to put the housing, and it's for an 8-year deadline. This is at least 6 months ahead of when the cities and the counties on all the world, it's a whole state, are going to be developing. So this is premature. Also, the last time I remember, and Mr. Laredo mentioned it, the jurisdiction that objected that didn't get enough water was led by Mr. Eastwood. He was the mayor of Carmel. And whether there was a lawsuit or threatened lawsuit, but there was litigation of some kind, and they got the water eventually. It was redone. That was an attempt by this district to set the allocation. And there were some details I'm not aware of, but I've been on the nonprofit board for AMBAC since 1993. And Mr. Stolt gave a good overview of the projects and the permitting and the estimates that AMBAC comes out with. And they've been pretty accurate on population. But for the last 20 years or so, We've been working under limited water assets, have been holding back commercial. I used to do commercial real estate. I got out of it because we didn't have any water for small businesses. We've lost a lot of small businesses. I believe that the water figures that have been put out by Mr. Stolt are as phony as a $3 bill. He's underestimated the water requirements for housing and for jobs, because especially small businesses have been killed in PG and in Monterey because of not enough water. So I'm recommending that you should hold this off for at least 6 months. The cities have finalized what their housing is going to be. I've heard the community development director of Monterey say, we're only going to be given enough for 300 and some houses or 300 and some units. We have 3,654. Mr. Stoltz aware of that, and certainly they're aware of it, but this is way in advance of when this should be moving forward. You're trying to pull up something and give a portion of the water that may be needed. And the cities are obligated to prepare and to get, meet this in 8 years. And it's a tough row, and whether they can do it or not remains to be seen. One of the big issues is Tarpey Flats. And if that's whether that's a Monterey or a county development. And that would go a lot towards meeting Monterey's commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to make comments? Do you see any hands?
I see
raised?
no hands.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't, excuse me, we don't need a motion on this, so we will simply, yes, sorry.
I just want to say, Mr. Rowley, you're entitled to express your opinion on, but I expect more respect towards the general manager, towards all of the staff. You may not agree with Mr. Stolt, but I don't see any really excuse for assuming bad faith when he does his analyses. I have a great deal of respect for our general manager and the other staff. And you can disagree, but please be respectful.
Thank you very much for your comments. And with that, I am going to close item number 17 and look to our wonderful general manager for item number 18.
Well, this is an item for you to kind of discuss among yourselves, but one of the directors has raised a question of should we continue to have non-Brown Act committee meetings in person? So Finance and Administration Committee is the only formal Brown Act committee, but we have tended in the past, prior to COVID, to try to run all of our committees the same way. Since we've returned from COVID, obviously board meetings and the Finance and Administration Committee are run in person in this format. We've contributed to public participation by maintaining the hybrid nature where we can. But our committee meetings have all been done online, Zoom meetings. And so the question to you all, is there direction that you want to provide that we should be transitioning back to in-person committee meetings? We typically won't set up this same way. Oftentimes we just set up in the square. There's different ways to set up. But it's a commitment. It's a commitment of time and travel and everything. So I just want to hear your opinion. I'm not trying to get the last word in, but the housing elements are due to the state December 15th. So we'll have all that information by November.
Thank you very much for that. So anyone wish to make comments on whether you want to Zoom or meet in person?
I have the sense that more people attend if there's Zoom meetings. Saves a little carbon pollution and time with driving on these roads.
Anybody else wish to weigh in? Thank you for that. Ian, do you have a feeling one way or the other?
No, I think it may save staff time setting up the room, getting prepared for us. They can still do the meeting from their desk, right? So for me, if that makes it easier for them, and then of course, the 2 or 3 members that's coming to the committee, but so it shouldn't be for us. It should be the benefit is more efficiency with the staff time. And so I would support that. I'll continue with Zoom in that vein.
Okay, thank you. Any way to write in? Okay, come over here. I'll go all the way. I'll go to George and then back to Karen. Thank you for your comments.
Staff, public access that also
I agree.
has some value, and all the way through, by getting together, because I think that feels good. I don't know if it makes some more productive discussion. I don't know, but it can go either way.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
What's your thought?
Me too. Zoom meetings save time, and as you point out, some amount of pollution. But if it is it more efficient for staff to do the meetings? Which way is better for staff, more efficient?
Well, just staff, I think Zoom is probably, they're both, I mean, this is a headache for
Make a decision, Dave.
certain people. And I do enjoy being in the same committee meeting with Suresh and not having to actually look at him in person. He'll be in one office, I'll be in the other office. I think it's been better for our public. We've had far greater attendance with Zoom meetings. And, if I can save you guys a drive, you can plan your day better. So I lean towards wanting to keep the committee meetings Zoom until they don't work.
Yeah. Well, that's my preference.
I agree with you. I particularly have seen an uptick throughout all of the different committees and boards that I serve on, an uptick in public participation via Zoom. People don't have to, they can wear their slippers. And I think people generally sort of like that. So it sounds as if we have consensus that we will continue to employ the Zoom teleconferencing option for our committee meetings, and of course, meet in person for the board meetings and the executive committee meetings. Well, I guess, yeah.
The administrative committee is the other one.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
And
Good.
we'll poll our TAC members to see what they want to do for the TAC. But I strongly encourage those to be in person, and
That's a
definitely
That's a
the
Brown,
TAC.
I'm sorry, that's a Brown Act
The
meeting.
TAC is Brown-
TAC and
yeah.
PAC are Brown Act meetings, so
Have no choice.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think we have come to a consensus on that. The last item on the agenda are the informational items and staff reports, which you all see and regularly comment on if needed. I'm not seeing anybody coming forward, so I'm going to take the opportunity to simply make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:48. Good. Thank you all very much. Very productive meeting.
Thank you.